So I did anxiety in the Z Generation, and there are multiple arguments about the cause of the rise of anxiety in the Z Generation, but I chose to stick to 3 arguments. So first, some argue that social media is the greatest cause, others that constant change, and lastly, the differences in generations. So to start off, I have some trivia, and then for whoever raises their hand, then they get a piece of candy. So anxiety is easily treatable, although how many people do you think receive treatment? Yeah.
I'd probably guess like less than, probably like 10%.
So it's actually about 33%. So it's 1/3. But do you want Sour Patch, Skittles, Swedish Fish, Nerds, or Gummy Bears?
Swedish Fish.
There you go. Okay, next one. How many people do you think worldwide are diagnosed with anxiety? Yeah.
1 in every 8.
So it's 284 million people, so I don't know exactly if it's that. But it's most prevalent health disorder worldwide. Which one?
I don't know. Just one of them. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, and is anxiety more frequent in males or females? Ren? Yes, so they're twice as more likely to get an anxiety disorder. Okay, and is anxiety, are anxiety and depression usually diagnosed together or separately?
Together. Sorry, I don't know why I said that.
Okay, it is together, so good job. Yeah, so nearly 50% of Americans diagnosed with depression are also diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. Which one? Good, I wanted the hair bows. Okay, so college seniors in a survey last fall by the American Psychological Association reported the worst mental health of any generation. So this helps prove my point that there has been a huge increase in anxiety, and I just want to get down to like what is the main source of it. So generalized anxiety disorder, also known as GAD, is defined as excessive, persistent, and unreasonable stress about everyday things. So excessive meaning it's happening way too often, and persistent meaning it never really goes away, and unreasonable meaning like it shouldn't be there for those certain reasons. So some may stress over like a big presentation, kind of like this one, but once it's over they feel like confident and stuff, or they're just like whatever, whereas for 3% of the population that stress never really goes away. So this anxiety might not be brought on by anything specific, but it's kind of just like always there, like whether it's about multiple things. And they might stress about money, relationships, family, or work. And although all of us stress about these things, theirs is to like a whole new level by like excessiveness and persistent and unreasonable. So this is my cartoon I did, and it says, oh, you're definitely gonna be late. And what if there's traffic? You know everyone's going south at this hour. Have you taken into account that you haven't even showered yet? You're supposed to bring the cups, remember? There's a party going on right now with no cups. So, and it's called the alarmist clock, and this is just a good representation of how someone with anxiety might think, because they are like overthinking everything to the point where it's all they think about, and it stresses them out a lot. And although it is good to think about your timing and like whether there's traffic and stuff, it shouldn't be consuming your mind so completely. So my first argument is that social media is the main cause. So Kelly Travis from Buffalo, New York, she's a high school teacher, and she did a study with her kids with her students. And one class period, they had a whiteboard and an expo marker, and they would tally every single time that they got a notification. So whether it was Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, text message, phone call, anything that would cause their attention. And they were told not to respond to it, to not generate more replies. And one girl got 150 Snapchat notifications just during the 1-hour class period. And many kids said that these notifications and stuff did cause a lot of stress because they felt the need to always be on their phone Otherwise, they'd have FOMO, which is fear of missing out, because they didn't want to be missing out on what was happening during that time. So they weren't able to focus on anything else because they had to know what was going on immediately. So research now points to smartphone-driven social media as one of the biggest drivers of stress. So the second one is constant change. And the insecurity that seems to be one of the defining hallmarks of this generation is a function of a quicker pace of change and the fact that change is unrelenting. So the article that this is from is called Generation Z Gets to Work. And I really liked this picture because the article talked about how change could either bring us down because we're not able to evolve quickly enough with it, or that we could either use it to make us greater and stronger and become the greatest generation because of all the resources we have now. So I really like this picture because it shows one man holding up change, whereas change is taking down other people. And also, the rules of success of previous generations often don't apply anymore because previous generations and our generation were always told, go to college, you'll get a good job and stuff like that, and you'll be successful. Whereas now that's really not as promised because the workforce is a lot tighter. Even though we are still taught it in our day, it still isn't promised. So the stress of different generations at work is my third resource. So it's one of the first times we have multiple generations all working together in the workplace, and this causes unique stressors. And so the video that I'll show you guys next, it's by Mary Donahue, and she talks about these different generations and stuff and why they are so different. So for example, the baby boomers, they grew up with the radio and stuff, so they're very auditory learners, and they like to write things down, they like to talk and stuff. They just have to have long conversations and everything. It mentioned in the video how they never went to bed when there was a fight. You talked it out no matter what. Whereas the Generation X, they are very visual learners because they grew up with television dinners. It mentioned how you always just sat down and you watched television when you were eating dinner and stuff, watching Disney Channel. So they like to draw things out, they like to see it visually, whereas the boomers like to hear it. So this causes they process info different, they communicate different, and their self-soothers for stress are different. And not understanding these differences can cause troubles in the workplace because you don't really know how to talk to the people that aren't in your generation because our brains all work a different way, considering our culture and stuff. So the video will talk about our generation, which is Generation Z.
Entire world. Gen Z, like my baby daughter, fear being alone. They're the first generation to grow up in technology. They're also the first generation to grow up with mass murder of neighbors by neighbors, as well as the threat of global terrorism. Like the boomers before them, who hid under their desk, this generation has never gone into school without knowing how to go into lockdown. They travel in packs. They're never without their phones. Long conversations stress them. They have 3-minute YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat. When they're stressed, they need their phone. They reach for their phone to connect to other people. Because when they were little and they cried, they were given a phone, an iPad, or a computer. Technology is their soother. So I've probably overwhelmed.
Okay, so technology is our soother because that's what we've always grown up with. Although it also is one of our main sources of stress, so we kind of have to know how to use it and be able to moderate it and stuff. So in my opinion, the constant and relentless change is the biggest reason for the rise in anxiety in our generation. Because personally, my anxiety comes from my personal safety because we're growing up and all we hear about is mass murders, school shootings, kidnapping, sex trafficking and stuff, and we can't really control any of that because it's always changing around us and stuff, whereas previous generations, they didn't really grow up with that constant fear. Also, our future is unknown, considering all of the climate change and stuff. We don't really know how our environment will be affected and stuff, and if we will be able to change it when the time comes that we really have to. And then also, since we have a tighter workforce now, we aren't for sure if we will be able to get good jobs and be successful. So we kind of just have to, like, if we do go to college, we kind of just have to go there and just hope for the best. Like, you can work hard, but you kind of just, like, you don't know for sure if you will be getting the success that you thought you would be getting. So all our contributors, but I think the constant and relentless change is the biggest cause for the rise of anxiety in the Z generation. And there's my sources.